Hi everyone, welcome to the very last session of our provider days. I'm happy to see many of you here, or many of you still here. There's a few people here, I think, who stuck it out for the whole 3 days, which has very much been a marathon and not a sprint. So I'm happy that you're still here and that you've toughed it out. This final session is on national infrastructures as EOSC providers. And opening this session, we have an introduction of national providers' role in EOSC by René Buch, the Chief Technology Officer of the EOSC Association. René is also the former CEO of Nordunet, which operates a network and e-infrastructure service for the Nordics research community. René boasts 15 years of experience in working with the wider INFN community, so he's probably best placed to give an introduction on this topic. So René, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Can I share my screen, please? Thank you. You should be able to see.
Yeah, that works perfectly.
Good. Thank you for this introduction. I have spent quite some years in the INFN community. Prior to that, I also have commercial background, so I have a little bit from both sides. I will quickly look at, give a short introduction to the EOSC Association. We are here to provide a single voice and accuracy for representing the broader EOSC stakeholder community. We're here to promote the alignment of European research policy and priorities and activities that we coordinate, including all our task forces, and to enable a seamless access to data through interoperable services that address the entire research data lifecycle, not as much as a provider, but as a facilitator of standards and a facilitator of collaboration. Our member base, we are 234 organizations. Of those, 161 members and 73 observers. They're a bit spread from which is research providing and service provider organizations, so it's a good spread that represent a broad part of the community. And a short introduction to our directors, at least you'll have it in the presentations. They run to both set the directions, but also do a huge amount of work for this community, and you will know from our homepage how to reach out to them. One of the things that we spend a lot of time on is on our advisory groups in that sense, both within implementation of EOSC and technical challenges, metadata, research careers and curricula, and how we sustain this. And these are the board advisory members for these groups, so you also know if you want to engage how to reach out to them. One of our core documents is the SRIA, the Strategic Research and Innovation Agenda, that came out in June last year. There is will be a number of updates to them. We have the multi-annual roadmap that's been out for consultations that we're looking at right now. And we're looking at open science practice and skills and how that works, standards and sustainable federated infrastructure, and I'll get a little bit back to that. One of the main things that's happened over the last year is a co-program where EOSC, as a general, gains co-programmed European partnership status with the EOSC Association. The main things in that is the EOSC steering board and the EOSC Association and the partnership board and the various members of the member states and associated countries. And if we look at the various roles here in that sense, which also feeds into the later part of my very hopefully short presentation, is the steering board has a mandate as an independent co-chaired expert group. The tripartite collaboration is a deployment of minimal viable EOSC and its added values, and the deployment of one monitoring system, and alignment of policies within the tripartite collaboration. We have a number of mandated members within EOSC. Those are the ones who've been mandated by the countries. We are working on defining the role, and we had a number of meetings with them yesterday, where we discussed a number of various matters. On the national infrastructures, now we get into the interesting part, establish a national level to coordinate EOSC activities. There is currently no structured interaction between the EOSC steering board, the EOSC and national structures yet, but that is of course things that we're working on. Looking a bit on this, I just started at EOSC here on February 1st. One of the places I was looking into is, well, what is the role of the national infrastructures? Because I think it also very much depends from country to country. The national research infrastructures plays a key role in enabling and developing research in this scientific domain and represent a large share of the research investment from the countries. Most national research infrastructures are funded, managed, and operated at the national or federated level and provide mostly services to national research communities. And in the context of many countries have a limited research projects, and especially in these times where research might not be on the top of the agenda, we are confronted with the challenge of supporting an increasingly large and complex portfolio in that sense. Potential users of research infrastructures are becoming more diverse, and particularly as the data produced by research infrastructure becomes in progress more complex and varied. The operation of these national research infrastructure requires careful balancing and optimization. And national research infrastructure are extremely diverse, and good practice and policies may not necessarily apply to all types in that sense. The national research infrastructure has become increasingly important in many national research strategies, as well as some supranational regional contexts, such as the European research area. Taking a bit from that report that I was addressing, that's on some of the challenges that need to be addressed is requirements in context of the entire user base and the long-term planning for the research infrastructure. The budget availability versus demand, how can we include operating cost and balancing that between new and existing research infrastructures? And what is the balance between national and international investment? And last but not least, also the transparency of the decision process, including research, strategic, and socio-economic factors. So some of the findings that came out of that is the roadmap for research infrastructures have three components. Those that are area strategic, those are large-scale research infrastructures of national importance, and the participation in international research infrastructures. Each proposal for a new research infrastructure must be discussed with the ability of similar infrastructures in the region or country or internationally, and see how that justifies an investment or is it to avoid duplication. Participation, and I'm going to jump a little to that one, depending on time. Participation in international research infrastructure is usually decided because there's no equivalent at the national level. And it's about which option gives the users the best value rather than what is national versus international. So if we look at that in a cross-border context, this is my last slide, most national research infrastructures are funded, managed, and operated at a national federated level and provide services mostly to national communities. How do national research infrastructure service portfolios fit into the cross-border context, and how can we align these? Do the national research infrastructure have sufficient capacity to service international users? And how does international use of these resources fit into the national goals? And how will these resource investments being compensated? We need to find balance between permanent and project funding. Most long-term infrastructures are funded by member states, and most projects are funded either as EU projects or EU projects which is national co-funding. But pure project funding is not the best or most suitable tool for long-term infrastructures. So the need for national member state integration of their national investment and integration of national service is important for EOSC, but there also need to be a sustainable business model to support cross-border delivery of services to ensure that we have a viable EOSC ecosystem. Thank you for listening to me, and I hope that gave a bit of kickoff for the next speakers. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for that introduction, René. The next presentation that we have is by Gergely Sipos, who will present how the EGI-ACE project specifically brings national services into the thematic cloud. Gergely is the head of services, solutions and support at the EGI Foundation. He's responsible for the provisioning and innovation of services owned by that foundation and for overseeing the operational status of the EGI infrastructure. And in addition to that, he's also the technical coordinator of EGI-ACE. So that's why he's introducing that project's work here. So Gergely, go ahead.
Thank you very much for the introduction and the possibility to speak about the EGI-ACE experiences with working with national providers. So let me just show one slide about what EGI-ACE is and how it fits into the EOSC landscape. EGI-ACE is basically the compute platform that offers a set of compute services in the European Open Science Cloud, so through the portal and through the marketplace that you heard about in the past days. It also supports a growing portfolio of thematic services that are fitting into the EOSC exchange layer. And these thematic services can benefit from the different types of compute capabilities and capacities that EGI-ACE brings together in collaboration with other cloud initiatives and HPC initiatives in Europe. The project started 15 months ago, and it has quite a large consortium. You can see also the budget, which is 12 million euro, out of which 8 million comes from the Commission. And in this talk specifically, I want to focus on this EOSC Compute platform, which is one of the key exploitable results, one of the main achievements of the project. This compute platform here, in this darker blue box, brings together an infrastructure layer, which consists of different types of cloud resources, most importantly, research clouds that are offered by national entities for the facilitation of research. These research clouds are often OpenStack in terms of their technology. We also have commercial cloud providers, high throughput compute providers, and later this year we will introduce high performance computing here. And on top of that, we have different kind of platform capabilities suited for different style of computing. And on top of that, external projects, communities, research infrastructures can build their thematic services, and if they wish, they can onboard those into the EOSC exchange. And specifically where national providers fit on this landscape, they fit into this research cloud layer. They can join with their national cloud in order to share capacities and capabilities with the broader ecosystem. When I say research clouds, again, just to stress this, we are quite limited, and we talk about typically OpenStack installations. So what I'm going to talk on the next slide is how we work with these national OpenStack-based clouds that are paid by national governments or different types of other national funding agencies, often to facilitate national research. In the EGI-ACE project, we have a cloud integration program, specifically focusing on these national clouds. Why we do that? In order to broaden the territory that we cover with cloud providers, and in order to broaden the capacity that the users can reach through the EOSC marketplace. Right now, we already have 26 cloud providers in this network. We added 3 last year during the first year of the EGI-ACE project. In the first couple of months of this year, we went beyond Europe. We signed up 1 cloud from China and 1 from South Africa. And we are working with 5 additional national clouds from Hungary, Georgia, Moldova, Latvia, and Armenia, who will participate in this network. What participation means in this context is that we enable them to give better and new functions for their existing users, their national users. So these clouds don't join the EGI-ACE because they receive financial benefits from the European Commission or from EGI. They join this network because they see a value of participating in this infrastructure. And this value is represented or achieved through 3 different connections. First, they connect their national cloud to the check-in, which is one of the EOSC compliant AAI proxy system. You heard about AAI proxy in the last days. By connecting to check-in, basically national users coming from the EOSC channel can seamlessly access the national resources without the need for re-authenticating. They connect to Data Hub, which is a repository of curated scientific data sets. And by connecting a national cloud to Data Hub, basically the national users using those national clouds can pull in and replicate European or EOSC data sets into their own environments. And they connect to AppDB, which is a repository of virtualized applications, virtualized services. These are virtual machine images that can be instantiated inside the national clouds in order to give new capabilities, new processing platforms for those national users. So by building up this network, what we achieve is a portability of applications, portability of data, and portability of users. So on top of that, EGI-ACE basically implements a resource allocation policy that facilitates the sending of users home. So instead of sending users abroad, which always causes the problem of who pays for the capacity, we rather send the users home, where the national entities already prepay the capacity for them. And we move the data and we move the applications in order to serve them in their home environment in the same setup that they would otherwise reach abroad. So this means that we can minimize the stress on cross-border funding, and we can benefit from the national funding that's already available in those national research clouds. And what we achieved in 15 months is we served already 67 communities. And of those communities, or to those communities, we delivered more than 80 million CPU hours from this network of clouds. And almost half of that capacity came from the national providers without using the virtual access fund. And only the other half came from the virtual access fund. So basically, it's a very good investment for both the national providers and for Europe, because by using the virtual access fund, which enables this whole federation, we can expand the capacity that is made available in a seamless way to all the international and national communities. So we are continuing with this expansion in the remaining 15 months, and we hope we will have even more clouds joining and even more user communities benefiting from this structure. So thank you.
Thanks a lot, Gergely. Before we move on with our next presentation, I wanted to remind all of you that we are still accepting questions via Slido. The link to join is in the chat and we'll post it again. Then moving on to our next presentation, that is by Luciano Gaido, who will present EOSC Pillar's work in supporting national infrastructure. So we had an overview of EGI-ACE, and now we're moving into another project, EOSC Pillar. Luciano will present that because he works at the Italian National Institute for Nuclear Physics, which is a member of the Italian computation and data infrastructure. He has 2 decades of experience working on distributing computing, and he also works on quite a few EOSC-related projects, including EOSC Future, EOSC Pillar, and EGI-ACE. And he is also a member of the EOSC Portal onboarding team. So, Luciano, the floor is yours.
Okay, thanks for the introduction. Can you see my slides?
Yeah, and we can hear you as well.
Okay, very good, thanks. So this presentation is related to the ICDI contribution to the EOSC. ICDI is the Italian Computing and Data Infrastructure, which started as a bottom-up initiative, a forum created by the representatives of the major Italian research infrastructures, with the goal of promoting synergies at national level and to optimize the Italian participation to several European and global challenges, including the EOSC and the European Data Infrastructure and the HPC or HPC. The status of this initiative is that now a memorandum of understanding has been signed by 23 institutions, but of course it is open to newcomers and also to non-members of this initiative. Many new partners are joining this ICDI, where also the Italian Ministry of University and Research is represented and it acts as observer. Currently, it is governed by an executive board, but there is an evolution ongoing because the process of establishing ICDI as a legal entity in the form of an association is undergoing, and the statutes are being defined. ICDI was one of the 4 founding members of the EOSC Association, and now it has been designated as the mandated organization for Italy. Since it is not a legal entity now, it is currently represented by GARA. The main activities of ICDI are regular meetings among its members to discuss topics of common interest, sharing experience, promote synergies, and coordinated actions at both national and European level. This means, for example, to try and see whether it's possible to have a coordinated participation to the European calls. This, of course, doesn't mean that every participation should be coordinated, because there are thematic calls where only a subset of the partners of ICDI are interested. But anyway, if possible, this coordinated participation is envisaged. There have been some important activities since the beginning. The first one of them was a survey of the activities at the Italian infrastructure on SARS-CoV-2 and COVID-19. And the results of this survey has been submitted to the Italian Ministry of Research, to the EOSC governing board, the provisional governance of EOSC, and also to the ESPRI. And there are plenty of other surveys performed since then and currently ongoing. One important activity was related to the establishment of a competence center for the EOSC. I will say something more in the next slides about this. And some task forces have been set up specifically for the definition of a model for a national cloud infrastructure and a data lake. Concerning the competence center, the mission is to create a network of expert initiative and research infrastructures, collecting all the skills already available within these entities, and support the community concerning open science, fair principle, and also to empower the participation of the Italian research community into the EOSC. The topics of interest are very different, ranging from legal and ethical to policies and strategies, and also to thematic topics, but also open access, DMP, and so on and so forth. It is important to remark that the ICDI Competence Center is an important contribution to a recently approved project called the Skills for EOSC under the Horizon Europe call. Some numbers about the activities of this competence center, which is mainly related to training, but not only to this, because it aims at providing also support and advice, guidelines and best practices, and so on and so forth, including a resource catalog of training materials. Since the beginning, this competence center has delivered 5 courses through a community-designed approach, where also the research infrastructure are involved in the design and the delivery of course. More than 400 researchers have been trained, also through an initiative called the Open Science Cafe, which organized 12 events with more than 1,500 participants. Other important activities already still ongoing are the Italian Federated Cloud. As I was already mentioning, a specific task force has been set up to develop a strategy and identify technical solution to implement this national infrastructure on cloud. there are already some thematic or institutional cloud infrastructure in Italy. Here the aim is to connect them to have a unique national infrastructure. The other important task force already created is the one related concerning the data lake. The goal is to study how to implement a data lake to facilitate the data sharing among the different institutions in Italy and to promote cooperation. Last but not least, the EOSC Pillar project has developed a model for a national catalog of resources, which means services and other materials. Although I was already mentioning the training catalog implemented by the competence center, this is a more comprehensive model developed within the EOSC Pillar project. Now it is being considered for implementing in operation by ICDI, but there are some steps needed beforehand to be sure that this catalog will be interoperable at the technical and the operational level with the EOSC catalog. The idea is to have this catalog containing some services which can then be pushed to the EOSC catalog and vice versa. The services already onboarded into the EOSC catalog can be pulled and stored into the national catalog. That's it from my side. Thanks for your attention.
Thanks a lot, Luciano. Then closing up this session and indeed closing out this entire three-day event is Giulia Malaguarnera. Giulia is the Outreach and Engagement Officer at OpenAIRE, and she is working on outreach and engagement and UX in EOSC Future. So I see a lot of Giulia because it's also what I do. She will talk you through some next steps before we start taking questions from the audience. So again, don't hesitate to post your questions to Slido.
Thank you, Catherine, for the introduction. And I'm going to present you today how the OpenAIRE-Nexus service can help national infrastructure to onboard in EOSC. First of all, the OpenAIRE users are researchers, librarians, open science support staff at the university level, research managers, policymakers, but obviously national infrastructures, implementers, and operators. What kind of service you can find in EOSC from national infrastructures? Mostly about publishing, monitoring, supporting, and training from the OpenAIRE network. And in particular, all these services listed here, like institutional repositories, open access journal, national and thematic repositories, CRIS system aggregators. For monitoring, also those to monitor and assess open science, including citation usage, APC cost, supporting that are regarding, for instance, fair assessment, data management plan, or how to anonymize the data, and of course, training. What is important is that all the kind of contents that you can upload in EOSC through OpenAIRE are following the OpenAIRE guidelines, which is community-based guidelines that are regarding literature repositories, data repositories, software, other research products, but also CRIS and usage statistics. And by being compliant of OpenAIRE guidelines, you are also compliant with the rules of participation in EOSC. So what is happening? National infrastructures as data source, by following these guidelines rules, can upload all this type of contents in OpenAIRE Provide, and then go directly to the Open Science Cloud. And in particular, all the data can be shown and linked thanks to the research graph. Then we have other services that help for develop, explore, and monitor all the services. but also connect research infrastructures and publishing. So the workflow, how it became FAIR in EOSC via OpenAIRE, is starting from onboarding the data source to provide that go directly in this research graph. Thanks to the research graph and other services like what is going to be EOSC Explore in the next month and is actually under development, is almost in production, you will be able to find this data source and access to them with all the metadata that are related and linked to the data source. Thanks to this, all the data and the resource will be interoperable as part of the EOSC environment, and also they will be reusable because all the data are provided with a robust metadata information. Now I would like to show you a case of integration, and in particular the RUCAP Portugal, which is the scientific open access repositories of Portugal. Basically, this is a portal that collects, aggregate, and index all the scientific scholarly communication and publication that are produced in Portugal and are connected with CRIS systems, repositories, and so on. So what they want to have was to have in one portal all these materials and repositories. And the solution that we provide to them through our services was an integration of these repositories and in the identification of project funders. So going to the details, the needs were to aggregate the records from repositories, ensure the interoperability of the systems, align with the national and international regulation, meeting the open science requirement, and enable machine-machine communication. So what we provide to them was to enhance the quality of the metadata thanks to the guidelines that I mentioned before, improve the visibility through EOSC, and thanks again with this robust metadata to collect valuable information that at the end they make an impact for the research funders, in particular in tracking, monitoring, and assessing the research output during the research workflow. In fact, this system is connected with the service of OpenAIRE from the start to the beginning of the data management. So this is an example of how the research funders can see the open science information about the project that they are funding. And this is a dashboard that is provided by OpenAIRE Monitor. So you can see the number of projects, the number of publication, and then the funders can also download and check the sources of the providers and the publication. They can see which are, for instance, the top journals, and then they can see the publication per year, what are the publication in open access and what's not, and again, the same for the research data. So with this, I will conclude my presentation, but before to leave you, I would like also to mention the fact that all the infrastructures like OpenAIRE, Grant, and EGI are collaborating in synergies in EOSC. So the next event will be about the national infrastructure, how we can collaborate within EOSC and at the national level. And this event will take place online the 24 May from 10 to 12. So I hope to see you there. Thanks for listening.
Thanks a lot, Giulia. We're going to move to questions now, and there's 2 questions already in Slido. So there's a first person asking whether there's a task force or advisory group in the EOSC Association that covers incentives or issues related to research infrastructure and participating in EOSC today. I don't know, René, whether that will be a question that probably you are best placed to answer.
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that. There's not like a task force that says we only look at research infrastructures, but and how they can actually be part of it. I think the current one that would be most applicable is our financial sustainability group. But another initiative that we're doing this year is we are talking to and doing country consultations. Will include the research infrastructures and discussion about that. I'm going to leave my email here in the chat, so people feel free to reach out if you've got any questions or any interest relating to that, and I'll see how we can arrange and facilitate that. The amount of infrastructure task forces we have now is not finite, so we can, in principle, create, if there's an interest for that, we can create more.
Thanks a lot. I hope that's clear to, was that a question by Wilmar? So I hope that's clear, Wilmar. There's another question by Wilmar that's gotten a few upvotes, which is how the establishment of the Competency Center for EOSC differs or aligns with national efforts to coordinate open science and fair adoption. Luciano?
Yeah, I can answer for ICDI, of course. So there is full alignment because EOSC is a subset of the Open Science Initiative and Actions. So in Italy, the Competence Center has in its DNA the open science. So most of the activities are also related to open science. So this is there is perfect alignment. Of course, there may be different models for competence centers, but it depends on the implementation. So the contribution I was mentioning of ICDI in this new project, Skills for EOSC, is to present our experience and our model to see whether there is agreement on this model and the possible adoption by someone else in other countries.
Okay, thanks, Luciano. I think that gives a very good overview. And there's a question specifically for you, Giulia, which is whether you can elaborate on the service data management plan that is provided and how that is delivered. I think there's several services that help out with data management plans. People have been asking that all throughout the week. So there's, I think, DMP online, but there's others as well. So maybe people can just put the links to those tools in the chat, because I think there's several ones. And then maybe Giulia, you can just elaborate a bit on the one that you mentioned.
Yes. Of course, by going to the EOSC marketplace, you can just simply typing data management plan or DMP, and you will find all the services that are inside the EOSC marketplace. The one that is developed by OpenAIRE is called Argos, and the link is just in the chat. And what is so special about Argos is that like other service of data management plan, you can create your own template. So we develop a new template based on the founders, based on the research community is asking for. But the things that is interesting now is that it's directly connected with the Zenodo. So for instance, if you have already data sets that you have there and you want to reuse, in the Argos service, you can just type and you will have everything pre-filled. Moreover, Argos is consenting for you to work on the evolution of the data. So anytime that you are publishing or you are connecting the data sets to projects, you will have all this information already integrated in the metadata that will feed this research graph. And at the end of the project, so if you have publication and other kind of data sets and whatever you are working on as a research project that is connected with the research project and the funders, everything is linked already, and the metadata that will come out and will be visible, for instance, to Explorer, both in OpenAIRE and both in EOSC, will be the final metadata that have as much more information than before. So this is the workflow, but if you would like to have more information, or if I was not clear, please contact me also later. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Giulia. There's one more question in Slido. That is, someone is wondering, Hannes is wondering whether there isn't a risk that the emergence of national infrastructures will create non-interoperable structures, and how that risk can be minimized in the long term. I think maybe, Gergely, that's something that you would be best placed to explain, and I see René has his hand up as well, so maybe you can go, René.
I can kick out on that one. I think it very much depends on how people work together. If we are coming from the ENVN world, we have very, very strong national infrastructures, and that has never been a hindrance for international and global collaboration. Of course, if a country to decide to go in a specific directions without common standards and without talking to others, that's clearly an inherent risk. I personally will find that would be suboptimal both for the national and international community, because science is global nowadays. So I'm not such afraid of that, and of course it's something we can coordinate. Thank you.
And then Luciano, I see that you have your hand up as well. Well,
yeah. So for Italy, for ICDI, I would say it is the opposite. The starting point is a situation where there are already existing structures, infrastructure, computing centers, storage services, and so on and so on, managed by different actors. The goal of the two task forces I was mentioning is exactly to define a model where there is a national infrastructure leveraging what is already existing. So how to make them interoperate by adopting standards and so on and so forth.
Okay, any more thoughts on that? If not, I think we've addressed all the questions in Slido. So there's nothing left to do but to thank all of you for attending the event, and to thank all of our speakers. And I would still like to draw your attention to a few of the events that we have coming up, which you can see on your screen here. So if you enjoyed this event, there's others that you can attend as well. On the 3rd and the 4th of May, there's 2 EOSC policy events in Strasbourg, but they're also being shown online. On the 3rd, there's more high-level events, and then on the 4th, there's a workshop-style event that also includes some focus on the national level. So those don't specifically focus on providers, but take more of a policy and governance point of view. Then also on the 3rd of May, we have our monthly Ask Me Anything session. So each month, the EOSC Future projects, together with the InfraEOSC 07 projects, organizes a session around one of the categories in the EOSC marketplace. We address those from more of a usage point of view, but I think for providers, it will also be interesting to see what kind of categories exist and how they are being used by users, to get that view on that as well. This month, on the 3rd of May, we have aggregators. And then on the 7th of June, before we take our summer break, we have HPC centers and their connection to EOSC. Then on the 25th of May, we have the Train the Trainer event on preparing training for EOSC. And then more into the future, but also very interesting, is from the 14th to the 17th November, there's an EOSC extravaganza. It's 3 days long. The first time you will all be able to see each other in person again, of one of the first times. And we'll have the EOSC Symposium, which will give you the latest on all things EOSC. Then Giulia's event was not in these slides yet, but I think that was on the 24th, right, Giulia? Yeah, so on the 24th, there's the event that Giulia introduced as well. So I'm hoping very much to see you there, and I'm hoping that you enjoyed this session and the last 3 days in general. Thanks again to our speakers, and see you at the next event. Bye-bye, everyone.